you so much for coming out to Malvern Books. We are here to celebrate the release, very recently, of Mark Haskell Smith's book, Blown. So I'm going to introduce our guest tonight, the author, and then also Jill Alexander Essbaum, who is going to be in conversation with Mark after he reads very briefly. So Mark Haskell Smith is the author of 5 novels, most recently Raw, a Love Story, and the nonfiction book Heart of Dankness, Underground Botanists, Outlaw Farmers, and the Race for the Cannabis Cup. His work has appeared in the Los Angeles Times, Los Angeles Review of Books, and Vulture. He lives in Los Angeles. Jill Alexander Essbaum is the author of 5 poetry books and the New York Times best-selling novel, Hausfrau. She's known Mark for about a decade, and they both teach an MFA program at UC Riverside. Please welcome, for now, Mark Haskell Smith.
Thanks, and thanks to Malvern Books for having me. It's fun to be here. And thanks for all you guys coming out. And there we go. I'm gigantically tall. Ready to do it? Thanks for coming. This novel, I started it about 5 years ago. And I also wrote, in between, I wrote this book called Naked at Lunch, which is the history of nudism, which for some reason Grove doesn't put in my bio. I think they're a little ashamed of it or something.
I think it's funny.
It's an icon. I know, right? I really like how this book turned out, and I hope you do too. I'm just going to read for a little bit, and then we're going to chat, and you can ask questions or whatever. It's very casual. This Texas tour is very casual. So here we go. Neil Nathanson thought about drinking his own urine. Isn't that what you do when you're out of water? Wasn't that what the Chilean soccer team did when they crashed into the Andes? Or was it the Chilean miners? He was sure someone from Chile had survived some kind of ordeal by drinking piss. He slumped back on the deck of the wrecked sailboat, lying like a corpse amidst the twisted metal and cracked wood, the tangles of rope and cable, feeling the hull bob and roll, powerless against the swell and surge of the open ocean, the horizon bisecting the world into water and sky. He wiped the salt spray off his glasses with his shirt and put them back on, blinking at the nighttime sky, looking at an infinity of stars and planets and galaxies and supernovas and black holes and red giants and white dwarfs and whatever else was up there. There weren't way too many, all piled on top of each other. He didn't recognize a single constellation. He missed New York City. The traffic, the noise, the light pollution. The universe isn't so vast and oppressive when you can't see it. Neil knew the ancient mariners had navigated by using the stars, and now that he thought of it, there was probably an app he could have downloaded about marine navigation. There wasn't time, besides the boat was state-of-the-art, with a full tech package. There was a backup hard drive for the computer, a streaming weather update, a satellite-guided navigation system with charts and maps, even an emergency distress signal. You could send an email, make phone calls. Of course, none of the electronics worked once the seawater got into them. He had no idea what had happened to the sail, torn off, sucked into the abyss, eaten by sea monsters. Who knew? The boat was destroyed. The interior cabin had been cracked like an eggshell, the doors blown off their hinges. Neil was grateful the thing still floated, but where was everyone? Had anyone else survived? And what had happened to Brian LeBlanc? He started this. It was all his fault. Neil picked a piece of peeling skin off his sunburned forehead, rolled it between his fingers, and popped it in his mouth. It tasted salty, like prosciutto. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, eating his own dead skin, but he'd been unable to catch a fish or a bird or even a fucking mosquito, and he was starving. Not starving like he used to feel on his way to a dinner at some bistro in Brooklyn. He was authentically starving. He hadn't eaten in 3 days, not since he choked down the final chunk of moldy camembert, which is like a running gag. Chunks of camembert. On the positive side, he'd surpassed his weight loss goal. It was not easy to be upbeat in this situation, but he didn't want anyone to succumb to despair and be one of those guys you read about in the news who gave up and died. It had been easy when there was food on the boat. He'd managed to make it last for over a week, but now that he'd gone days without eating, weren't there lots of stories of people adrift for months? How did they survive? He realized he was experiencing an unhealthy level of anxiety. It was like a panic attack. Neil took a deep breath. He needed to be calm, rational. His current state of affairs called for proactive solutions. He wasn't going to lie there and wait for the seagulls to peck his eyes out. If he had to, if it came down to it, he'd drink a cup of this. He rolled onto his belly and slowly pulled himself up. His legs were wobbly and dizzy, and he got dizzy if he stood up too fast. So he took his time, using the wheel for balance, making his way into the cabin. The interior, which had once looked like a serene and stylish room in a boutique hotel, now resembled a bedroom after a tornado, or the inside of a dumpster. He fished an empty wine bottle off the floor and made sure its screw top fit. The bottle had to be airtight. That's the first rule of flotation. How many messages had he cast into the sea? So many he'd run out of paper. What could he say that he hadn't already said? How could anyone rescue him if he didn't even know where he was? After rummaging in the cupboards, he found a soggy paper bag and tried to write, but the paper disintegrated in his hand. He took out his wallet and removed his last business card. It still looked impressive. It still said Neil Nathanson, Director of Special Collections, and had the name of the investment bank he worked for, the Wall Street address, the phone number, and email. He turned the card over and thought about what to write, wondering how to sum up his situation as clearly and succinctly as possible. He wrote the word fucked on the back of the card and slid it into the bottle. Neil screwed on the top, gave it an extra twist to make sure it was tight, and staggered to the doorway. He looked at the boat. It had been a pretty awesome boat, sleek and unadorned, as if designed by a Scandinavian architect, a Beneteau Oceanus 38.1. Neil knew that because he'd found the owner's manual. He wondered if it had any salvage value. Would his boss be able to recoup some of the money? Neil figured that it would be the kind of boat he'd buy if he had an offshore account full of illegally skimmed millions and liked sailing. But he was pretty sure by now that he didn't like sailing. He chucked the bottle out into the night and waited for the splash. That's a little. That's the first couple pages. Well, Jill,
Shall we have our chat now?
let's have our chat.